I think this might be the dirtiest GPU that I've ever seen. This is absolutely disgusting. This is around 5 or 6 years that this has never been cleaned. There are various reasons for that we'll discuss in this video. This video is basically for educational purposes. This is the GTX 1660 Ti from MSI. It originally looked something like this. All nice and shiny and illuminated beautifully. The one we have here has definitely seen better days. This is around 5 years worth of smoking next to the computer, and also having it in various locations like on the floor, next to pets, etc. There's all sorts in here. Dog hairs and spider webs and fur and all sorts. We also had an accident where I dropped something on one of the fan blades and it snapped. So we had to wait 3 weeks while we ordered some new fans. These new fans have arrived and are fantastic, but my background has changed in the meantime, so you will need to excuse that fact. But let's get on with this quick revive and see if we can bring this GPU back to life. So let's take a quick look at what we're going to need to carry out these repairs. I like to use these really thin paintbrushes. These are ideal for getting into the radiator fins. I also use an old paintbrush to get a little deeper. We've got the Eufy Hoover brush. They do work, so if that's all you've got, you can go ahead and use one of those. We're also going to need some tweezers for the electrical connectors, although you can get them off with a screwdriver. Speaking of screwdrivers, we do need a small electronics screwdriver. We can use any, but I'm going to use my broken electric screwdriver. I'm also going to use a magnetizer. This allows the screws to stick to the tip of the screwdriver. This way you don't lose any of those precious, delicate little screws. You might also want some IPA, some isopropyl alcohol. This is very good for cleaning components. We're also going to need an air duster, and then we're going to want to water down some of this alcohol because you don't want to get it on this plastic shroud, especially. It can damage if you use neat alcohol on here. We also want some fresh thermal paste, and you might want rubber gloves if you care about it being particularly dirty. Things to pay attention to, guys. When you separate the GPU from the housing, you've got a few electrical connectors here. You've got the power to the fans, which is a 4-pin connector, the white one here. And then you've also got another connector just behind that, which is the RGB connector. You need to disconnect these before it will separate from the shroud properly. You can do this once you've loosened everything off, but I like to do it now. Be very delicate with these. You don't want to damage any of these pins or any of these fan headers. There is also a third RGB plug at the back, so be extra delicate with this, guys. So recommend giving the GPU a little wipe over with a microfiber cloth just to take that excess dust away. Okay, let's get on with the teardown then. So we're going to wear some gloves. These are not necessarily needed, but I do recommend them with working with something this dirty. You might also want to put something over your mouth as well, just so you don't breathe in all of that dust. It's not going to be very good to breathe in, guys, that's for sure. So now we're going to use our screwdriver. We're going to remove these screws first. I loosen them off in sequence. This is just to not put too much pressure on one side of the chip. So this should just remove from the fan shroud now, like so. Be very careful with this, guys. This is your GPU, and just look at that. It does still have some moisture, and just look at all that dust in here. Give it a little delicate wipe with a microfiber cloth. But we're going to come back with some alcohol and give all this a really good clean. We'll also give it a blast of air. But yeah, let's look at all that. Disgusting. Okay, then we come to the fan shroud and the block. So this is really simple to remove. First, put the block down, and then if you look inside the fan shroud here, we've got one screw there, and we've got another one at the top, and then this side we've got one there, and if we can just see in there, we've got another one there. So let's undo these. Now to lift this off, it can seem a little tricky, but it's actually quite simple. What you do is you lift one corner and slightly twist the blade to lift it out. You do the same on this side, and then it just pops backwards and off. And as long as you undone all of these, then this will just separate easily. We're going to want to give this a really good clean. We're not going to want to put alcohol on here because it is plastic and we don't want to damage this with neat alcohol. This is what we use the watered down spray version for, just so it isn't so corrosive on the plastics. And then continue with the tear down. We need to remove these damaged fans. Normally I would just clean these, but because we have the damaged fan here, I have ordered some replacements. I'll also leave links down in the description for the replacements. So the same thing, you want to rotate the fan blade slightly. As you can see here, we've got a broken blade, so that works to our advantage. Don't forget guys, keep all of your screws separate and together. I'm just showing you there that you don't need the broken fan blade to access it. You can access it without. There's 3 of these. And there's 3 this side as well. Can't see from here. Now these have to be some of the worst fans that I've ever seen. I'm just going to lift these off. So these have got like a little pin. And if you just slightly bend that out, the wire should just slide underneath. And then the same applies for this one. The cable might be a little bit tight and it feel like it wants to snag, but it's okay. These are old fans, so don't need to worry too much. Lift that slightly, and then this should do the same. And like so, we have the old fans out. Look at that. Just for comparison, that's what they should look like. Now this is your radiator. It's very, very delicate. You don't want to damage any of these fins at all, even though it's not likely to leak. It's like a vapor chamber. So these fan blades help dissipate the heat, so you don't want to bend them or break them in any way. It makes the card less efficient at cooling. Okay, so the first thing I want to try is a very delicate brush. And I just want to loosen as much as I can. You don't want to breathe any of this in. Some of this is so thick. And then it won't hurt you to run it across there as well. And then that is the radiator, clean. It's got some staining, so we're going to attempt to clean that. This is just your typical IPA mixed with kettle water, but ideally you would want distilled water. So I've sprayed a little on the cloth for now. And first of all, we're going to wipe. Because this is an aluminium heatsink that has attracted heat, you will see some slight staining and some rainbowing effect on the metals. That will never come clean, unfortunately. Right, so if you can see that, it's got like a bit of a rainbow tint to it. That's staining. You're not going to get that off. But otherwise, that is quite clean. This is not come clean, so we're going to go with the second approach here. So now we're going to soak this with some wet alcohol. We're going to use the cloth though, because I'm doing it on camera. Ideally, I should be doing it outside. And then you don't want this dirty water to accumulate in there, so you want to keep spraying it so it has some flow and takes the dirt with it. Once the GPU has got to this kind of condition though, you're never going to get it back as it was, unfortunately. You don't want to do this with just water, by the way. You want to use the alcohol because the alcohol helps it evaporate. And now look at that. Okay. Absolutely disgusting. Right. Let's get this up. Getting all this out. Got a fresh mix now. And then I'm going to go through it again. And then what I like to do is once I've sprayed through all of the thins, I use an air can and then I spray air through. This removes all of the little tiny beads of water and any excess water that might be hiding in between those fins. You definitely do not want any liquid in here when you rebuild this thing, especially if you're going to plug it straight back in. And that, folks, is one fantastically clean radiator. Look at that, you can see through it now. While it's damp, use it to clean this. That's pretty clean now, actually. It just pretty much needed a good wipe over. I'm going to try and get in all the little corners and all the bits, get it nice and fresh. You don't have to be perfect here, but you do want to get into all the little nooks and crannies. That looks pretty good to me. Moving on to the main board now, then we're going to start with some air blast, just in the places that get hot. Then we'll also go around with the alcohol brush. We're going to use our alcohol brush and get rid of all the brown stains on the metal trays and on all of the MOSFETs and stuff like that. We'll get everything nice and clean. I mean, if you wanted to go deeper, you could take all this off as well and go right into it, but we don't need to do that. We just need to give it a good clean so it runs nice and cool and just like it should. Be very delicate here. We want this paste off. Right, so to clean the chip, we are going to use some neat IPA. We're just going to stick some IPA onto a microfiber cloth, but you can also use something like a delicate tissue, some cotton wool. Cotton buds work really well. I just use a microfiber cloth. Okay. Be very careful not to scratch that chip or dent it or break it in any way. Once you're happy that you've given it a thorough clean, we can start rebuilding this now. And first of all, we're going to fit our new fans. So you want to get the cables, feed them under, and pop that back down to hold it in place. Rebuilding is a simple process of just doing everything in reverse. Pop it down to keep it in place. It can seem a little tricky, but it's not that tricky once you get the hang of it. Pick up a screw. The hard bit is lining the holes up. We can start rebuilding this now. There's one fan in place. So same again for the second fan. A little pro tip as well. When you're putting the screws in the holes, to make sure that you're not going to mess around with the thread in any way, a good thing to do is to always anti-clockwise your screw just for a moment, right? So when you put it in, give it a little twist to the right to make sure that you're aligned. And there's both of the new fans fitted. Also, it can only go together one way, so you can't really get it the wrong way around. You also do have some fluid here leaking out of the radiator still. This is not ideal, but as long as we catch it now, it's absolutely fine. Also, this is an alcohol mix, so it will evaporate. It'll just take a little longer because it's inside the fins, and we can also give it another blast with air if we want to be extra confident that there's no fluids left in there whatsoever. So now we'll put the fan shroud back on. Once we've tightened all 4 of the fan shroud screws up, we can go ahead and start looking at the thermal paste. The thermal paste we're using is Maxtor CTG8, the thermal grease. We'll try this thermal paste and see how good it is. Don't be shy with the thermal paste on the GPU. Needs a fair bit. Okay, that's plenty. Can you see how much is on there? And what we do is we line up our front side with our cables, and we make sure that this sits upside down, like so. Make sure your cables are out of the way, and then we need to get these 4 holes lined up with these 4 pins. So now you want to kind of roughly have them lined up before you put the GPU down. Now's a good time to start plugging in these little adapters. We're going to put in the 4-pin fan header first, which is the white one. There may be a little excess cable left over here, but it's fine. You can literally just tuck it up. It'll be absolutely fine. And then you want to connect your RGB and then continue aligning the 4 holes. And you want to put all 4 of these back in, but we don't want to tighten them all the way up. I do these in sequence. Now you want to come to the alternate corner. And there we go. Fully restored GPU, guys. We've got one more plug to plug in around this side. And there we go. One fully restored GPU. This definitely looks a lot better. To be honest, I'm not going to be using this very much. I'm just going to quickly test that everything works okay. But other than that, this actually is a spare GPU. I just didn't want to throw it away. I'm pleased to say everything works as it should. temperatures are perfect, and it plays all of the modern games fine, although it is limited with its frame rates etc. because of the age of the card. And although this card is limited by its age, I am still pleased that we got it from this condition to this condition in around about an hour. We are officially as good as Linus Tech Tips now, definitely worth the effort. Also guys, I would recommend you don't smoke around your computer, it's really not good for your components. If you found any part of this video helpful at all, please consider leaving a like on the video, subscribing to the channel with your notifications on, that way you never miss any future uploads. Thanks to each and every one of you for watching the video, I really appreciate you guys, and until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. I'm Craig, this is Really Random Reviews, and I'll see you in my next video.